Mr. President.
Senator from New Hampshire.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by echoing the wonderful analysis of my colleague, Senator Heitkamp, relative to how much we're all going to miss Senator Jay Rockefeller. As she pointed out, he reminded us today why we all are here, and that is to try and make a difference for our constituents and for the people that we serve, and no one did that better than Jay Rockefeller. He was always a voice for those most in need and never stopped fighting for the people he served, so we will certainly miss him. Mr. President, I really came to the floor this afternoon to talk about a provision that I think we need to make sure is included as we continue to negotiate and debate the tax extenders package. And that's a common sense, bipartisan, bicameral provision that enjoys a lot of support and one that I think should be included in any reform or extension effort, and that is the enhanced tax incentive for conservation easement donations. Conservation easements are a critical component of modern-day efforts to preserve our outdoor treasures. That's something that means a lot to us in New Hampshire, where we have so many wonderful natural resources and historic resources, and we want to try and preserve them. One of the things that conservation easements do is provide a flexible, voluntary, non-governmental, and non-regulatory approach to protecting our nation's natural places. Conservation easements and tax incentives for their donations allow landowners to exchange development rights in order to protect a property's conservation values, and that then allows them to pass on those conservation values to future generations. Easements keep the land in its natural state and ensures that these outdoor treasures aren't subdivided and exploited. And just as important, lands placed in conservation easements can continue to be farmed, grazed, hunted, or used for outdoor recreation and wildlife conservation. And equally important, they remain on the tax rolls, which makes such a huge difference to local communities. In 2006, Congress recognized the importance of promoting conservation easements by enacting the enhanced tax incentive for conservation easement donations. And as I said, that was done with bipartisan, bicameral support, because this is an idea that makes sense. This tax incentive provided working and middle-class landowners with the ability to donate their land for conservation, as opposed to simply selling off the land to the highest bidder, allowing it to be developed and partitioned off. And the great thing about this incentive is that it worked. It's directly responsible for the conservation of more than 2 million acres of our nation's natural outdoor heritage. Now, unfortunately, as so many provisions in the tax extenders bill, this tax incentive lapsed at the end of 2013. And as a result, landowners who want to donate their land for conservation but need this enhanced deduction to make it work financially, these landowners are left in limbo. Making this incentive permanent will provide much needed certainty to landowners, because the decision of whether to donate conservation easements on land, and land is often a family's most valuable asset, that decision requires careful planning and consideration, and it often takes years from the initial conversations with the landowner before a conservation easement is executed. Understandably, many landowners will never begin this process without the assurance of a permanent incentive. In New Hampshire, we've seen firsthand how valuable the enhanced conservation easement tax credit is when it comes to making sure we're protecting our special outdoor places for generations to come. For example, take Henry Brooks Jr. and his sister Linda Brown. They donated 2 conservation easements on about 200 acres of land in Sullivan, New Hampshire, which is down in the western part of our state in what we call the Monadnock region, not too far from the Vermont border. The land had been in their family since the time of the town's founding, over 200 years. It's open fields with expansive views all the way to Vermont. The fields are pasture and haylands that are used for Henry's beef cattle. The forest, streams, and wetlands also provide excellent wildlife habitat. The enhanced conservation easement tax incentive was very persuasive in their decision to move forward and finish the project by the end of 2013. In particular, the ability to take that deduction over the course of 16 years is going to make a significant difference for Henry, who is really of modest means. And as Linda, his sister, said, the incentive is a win-win situation. Another example that I think is significant is the Squam Lakes watershed. The Squam watershed is renowned for its conservation ethos, and it's the only watershed that's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Organizations like the Squam Lakes Conservation Society have used conservation easements to protect 25% of the watershed. And thanks to tax deductions, 91% of these easements were donated. So think about that. 25% of the watershed and 91% of it has been donated. Projects like these in New Hampshire are great examples of the need to renew the enhanced conservation and easement deduction. And you know, protecting these spaces isn't just good for the environment. Certainly that's the case. But it's also critical to New Hampshire's economy, and I know that's true in other states as well. But our economy depends on tourism, on outdoor recreation. We have thousands of jobs that are created in those industries that bring millions of dollars into our state. And if we can preserve our landscape and protect our natural resources, it makes a huge difference in ensuring that those industries are successful, that tourists want to continue to come to New Hampshire and visit. Right now, we have families who are making decisions about what they're going to do with conservation easements, and they're in limbo because Congress has not yet acted on this issue. We haven't determined if we're going to pass another tax extenders package and how long we're going to pass that for, so people don't know whether they're going to have any certainty about taking this tax deduction on a conservation easement. It's time for us to provide certainty, to encourage families to continue to make those contributions to protect these natural treasures. It's important not only in New Hampshire, I'm sure it's important in North Dakota and across this country. So I urge my colleagues, as we are continuing to look at a tax extenders bill, that we support this legislation that will make smart incentives to help our local economies grow stronger and help the middle class. So thank you very much, Madam President. I hope we can make some progress on this next week. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk.